Hi, this is Kris Wilder, and again, I'm at the Animal Barbecue, and I'm actually here with the host, Marc Animal MacYoung, but we're going to get to him in just a second. I want to make sure that everybody knows that this is on the road, and there's going to be a series of interviews that are going to be coming off of this weekend event in Colorado, because, doggone it, there's a lot of really exciting, good people here. And Marc, since you're sitting right here and you've got a headset on, why don't we start talking? But the first thing is that if somebody doesn't know who you are, how do you tell them who you are?
It would take too long to explain.
I'm going to go with that. What's your best book?
My first book was Cheap Shots, Ambushes, and Other Lessons, which was pure street survival.
Yep.
The one that I like from a technical standpoint is The Secrets of Effective Offense, but it's kind of, if you don't have a master's degree equivalent understanding in the martial arts, it can be really confusing. But this is it's one of those books of when you're finally qualified to understand the good questions, that book will blow you away.
Okay, so you grew up as a pillar of the Inglewood community?
Well, yes, it was Los Angeles, and I say that I was part of the reason why the streets of LA were so dangerous.
Yeah, and somewhere along the line, you got your head screwed on straight, and now you're doing, you're working the other side of the tracks. And I want to point this out, is that driving up here, I literally had to drive across the other side of the railway tracks to get to your
You'll
house.
also notice that I live underneath a rock. So yes, I live on the wrong side of the tracks. I live under a rock, and I have been to Hell, Poland. So when people tell me to go there, I can say been there, and they have great seafood. And once while driving past a feedlot in a high windstorm, I discovered that there's certain particulate mass that can fly. So I too have been in a shitstorm. So I've been through all cliches.
So, of those books, if somebody picks those up, they're going to learn a little bit about, well, they're going to learn a lot, but it depends on how much they absorb it. What they're going to learn about is street self-defense. They're going to learn about the mechanics of that, the psychology of that, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if somebody were not aware of Marc Animal MacYoung, I would say to them this, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that Marc Animal MacYoung has worked the other side of the street and is now on the good side of the street, telling good people how to keep their head screwed on straight, stay out of trouble, and if you pay attention, you might learn something that'll pull your bacon out of the fire.
That's true. There's also the understanding of, in a bad month, working the various bars and security and bounty hunting and all that stuff, I went through more violence than most people will ever go through in their entire life.
Oh, no question.
People come to me and they're telling me, yeah, well, I study in so-and-so, and he knows real violence. And, I hate to say it, but it's like, I'm sorry, that was just a bad week for me.
Yeah. Just a bad week. So, you've got a new project that you're working on,
mm-hmm.
and it is conflict communications. Now, that's well, I'll tell you what. Why don't you just take it from the top and explain to the listeners what conflict communication is, how you see it, and how it's presented.
Okay. Rory Miller and I got together and discovered that we have a lot in common. And one of the bigger things that we have in common is that we're both wired differently. And we had gone into the extremes of life where things were actually rather simple. And that is a massive statement. But what we discovered living out there and then trying to learn how to function in normal society is that the gang member who was threatening to shoot us for disrespecting him and our wives being pissed off at us were actually operating from the same motivations. The tactics, the timing, the intensity,
mm-hmm.
and what they were doing about it was totally different. But there was a similarity in the motivation. They felt disrespected.
Okay.
And Rory and I started comparing notes, and what we discovered is that there's actually core elements of human conflict that people follow instinctively, and the analogy we use is like, does a fish recognize the water that it swims in?
No. So that would lead me to believe that I wouldn't understand my emotional outburst.
No, you wouldn't understand the mechanisms behind it. Everybody understands there's
sure.
right, and there's a pattern and there's this behavior. And again, the fish inside the water analogy works because Rory and I are both otters. We exist in different levels, and we understand this environment and that environment.
Now, when you use the
analogy,
analogy. Thanks. I was going to say metaphor. When you use the analogy of otter, what you're saying is that you can be on dry land, but you can also be in the water.
Right, and we understand that there's different, and we actually had to study humans like bugs to understand them. And in the extreme, it's really easy to understand it because a lot of times when somebody, for example, most violence comes with instructions on how to avoid it.
You better knock that off or I'm going to kick your ass.
Right, and what happens though is that our fear, and we have auditory exclusion and adrenal stress and all this other stuff, but basically we don't hear the way out of it. All we hear is the threat.
Okay, let's back this up because I think that is really significant, is that there is usually an avenue of escape given.
Yes.
But because of our body being all jacked up on adrenaline or what have you, we don't hear the escape mechanism. We only hear the threat.
Okay. Yes, halfway there. There's a little more than that. And most of what conflict communication is actually explaining the stuff that we exist in. And our cycles that we're designed not to see, we're designed to do.
Let me interrupt you here. When you say that we exist in, you mean like our day-to-day environment?
No, I'm talking, nothing personal. I'm not commenting on your sex life, but every night you go to bed with a human, a monkey, and a lizard.
Right, exactly.
Okay. These talk about the different levels of your brain.
Right.
And each level has been given to us, and I don't care who you ascribe the gift of the human brain to. It's an awesome, amazing bit of design.
Yeah.
The creator was just he had a good day that day. And basically what it is that this system has operated for millions of years, and it's kept this human species alive. And the lizard brain is pure survival. It's the fight, flight, thinking is like that of a lizard. It's a frog brain. It keeps your body operating. The monkey brain is our emotional and social brain, and it goes with our limbic system. The lizard brain is our hindbrain or cerebral cortex. But basically, we are social primates. We're designed to operate in groups.
Sure.
Now, the thing is, when we think, conflict will destroy the group. No, actually, there are biological patterns, and we call them scripts and roles, that when we get into conflict, when we get adrenalized, we default to these scripts. So it isn't just the adrenal stress.
Sure.
It's these behavioral patterns that we inherited. And then,
No, I'm listening.
And there's more.
I'm listening to you.
We have these core patterns, and then, depending on what culture we're raised in, that's how we choose to specifically manifest them.
Okay, and when you say culture,
yes,
I think you're talking strata, not necessarily what my particular tribe values, not necessarily whether I'm a Canadian or a Yugoslavian or Slavic or whatever.
Right.
It's a strata, because I can tell you this, that where my karate school is, on one side of the street, I have kids that are waking up in 400 square foot bedrooms with views of the sound. On the other side, I've got entire families living in 400 square feet.
Yes.
The values
are
very different.
Right. One of the most exciting classes that I ever had in college was cultural anthropology. It was the only college class afterwards, after I took my final, the professor followed me out and said, "I want to thank you for taking this class." Because she and I would just have these great conversations.
Sure.
And she was talking one day, and she expressed something, and I sat there and I thought, and I said, "So it's kind of like Sturgeon's Law." She goes, "What is that?"
Sturgeon's Law.
Ted Sturgeon, the guy who wrote the Star Trek with Spock on PMS.
With the en wound.
Yes,
yeah,
right.
Oh, sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
He came up with a rule about science fiction.
Well, you have to mate every 7 years.
Well, no. No. Once a nerd falls in love, that's it. But until then, that's about right. Basically, his comment was 90% of everything was crud.
Now, this is Sturgeon, as in the fish.
Theodore Sturgeon, the science fiction author.
Sturgeon or surgeon?
Sturgeon.
Okay,
yes, he was named after the fish. Somewhere, I don't know, man. That's with the human, monkey, and lizard. We don't want to think about fish.
Ted Sturgeon.
So Ted Sturgeon said 90% of everything is crud. So when I asked my cultural anthropologist or teacher, I went, so it's kind of like Sturgeon's law. She goes, what do you mean about that? I said, well, he said 90% of everything is crud, but you're talking that there's 10% of core elements that are going to have to be addressed by any human group, right, for long-term survival. The other 90% is how a particular group handles it.
Okay, let me repeat this back.
Right. Okay, go ahead.
What you're saying is that there are certain inevitable and inalienable experiences that, as a human being and in a group, you will experience.
Yes.
How your group or tribe decides to handle those is different.
Is your culture.
Okay,
now,
got it.
And within the culture, you have different socioeconomic levels.
Sure.
So what you were asking is the levels within levels. So the way things, yes, that's a badger. There's a ferret wandering around in the room. That happens here.
He snuck up on me at my jungle cat-like reflexes took off for just a moment.
Yes, I understand that. And by the way, $5 go to the weasel. They're ferocious little guys. They're friendly. They're so ferocious they can afford to be friendly. There's many parallels between me and ferrets, I'm told.
All right, back to
anyway. So the idea is the rules that we grew up thinking this is how it's done are basically how our tribe does it. And as long as they meet these elements, right? Like, for example, in your life, there's going to be certain keynote stages. Here in the United States, you go to school, you graduate high school. The graduation there's a ceremony.
Sure.
You fall in love, you get married, you have kids. I mean, there's these ceremonies that this is how people handle these things in a culture. And they are different in different cultures. Right. But that's an example of the 10%. There's these elements that will be coming up. And then, the culture is how they handle it. So basically, one of the things that, for a prime example, is distance. Different cultures have different personal spaces.
Let me speak to that for just a moment. I grew up on a farm.
Yes.
My nearest neighbor was like 5 miles away. And when I moved to the city, I had a very difficult time dealing with the ambient space.
Right.
It was like, hey, stand back.
Right.
Because, where I came from, when you shook hands with somebody, you usually had to take a step forward and lean in to shake hands. And all of a sudden, I got people so close to me that they're grabbing my elbow and shaking my hand, too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you know what, man, that you're inside my space, and this is not going well.
Right. And that, for example, cowboys meeting Japanese and living here in Colorado and marrying into a ranching family.
Yeah.
I've actually seen ranchers who have that same distance issue encountering Japanese from Tokyo who are accustomed to being just packed together.
Mm-hmm.
Right. One of the problems that they're having in the Middle East right now is you're getting guys who have these distance rules. Like in the street, you don't crowd each other.
Right.
That's one element. And the problem is, somebody gets stationed overseas, and Middle Easterners, number one, are very, very close to each other, and it sounds like they're going to punch each other.
Yeah.
Right. So here's this guy like, to an American, it's a, he's going off on me, and they deck him, and it's like, actually, he was inviting you for tea.
Yeah.
So, but that's how they do. Now, bringing this back to conflict.
Sure.
Different people have different patterns they have different tactics of conflict. But what happens is that we will find within a group that we have these default conflict patterns. There's a thing that I call the conflict cycle, which is predictable stages that a conflict will go through.
Well, let me ask you this. Before we get too far down the conflict cycle, one strata is going to deal with this in a way that would be considered dishonorable or partially insane
Right.
by another strata. As an
Exactly.
example, if my strata, if my tribe prides itself on being strong,
Mm-hmm.
you're getting decked.
Well, yes.
But if I'm busy, if I do that, if I perform that behavior
In
a
an
group
office?
of people, who are, have got MBAs and have gone to Stanford and so forth, all of a sudden I am freaking insane to them.
Right.
I am dangerous.
Yes.
I am ultra violent.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, I just handled this the way that we handle it.
Back home. Now, and a perfect example of that is, okay, I, as a child, moved around a lot. And my first stepfather was Mexican. And I learned how to get mad like a Mexican.
Mm.
And I eventually had to learn how to get angry like a white guy. Because what was happening is people would walk up to me and it's like, Animal, you just went off on that dude. It's like, no, I didn't. It's like, dude, you didn't, you just decked him. It's like, no, I didn't go off on him. I said you're pissing me off.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, and then you hit him. It's like, yeah, but I warned him. That's not a warning. Well, where I was from, that was all the warning you're going to get.
Yeah.
Right? And then it was like, oh, wait a minute, I have to learn how to, I am angry. See how angry I am? If you do not stop this, I shall kick your ass.
I may have to take my blazer off to do this.
Well, yeah, well, I mean, it was basically, I had to learn to do what Rory calls monkey dance.
Sure.
Right? And because we didn't do that.
You got your warning, and here it is.
Yeah, that was it.
And now I'm going to give you a warning. I'm going to take it to DEFCON 2. Now I'm going DEFCON 3. Now I'm going to have to do. Now I'm going to now.
Well,
now we're
there's different again, this comes back to different cultures.
Sure.
One of the things is I'm going to level it out, and different cultures, and this is a big issue where people are scared about dealing with different cultures. A lot of times when you have an established village, what'll happen is two guys will get engaged in a conflict. It'll blow up, and actually what they're relying on is everybody else in the village to separate them. And the calmer heads will talk it out.
Well, now everybody's vested.
Everybody's vested, but on top of that, the two participants have shown that they're willing to go there. But now that everybody's involved, that's the safety. So the safety net, and this is, very common in the white Anglo-Saxon world, they believe that the self-control relies on them.
Yeah.
In other cultures, the self-control relies on everybody else. So that's how problems are solved. And you need to know when you're dealing in this kind of culture that that's a script. That's an example of what I was talking about, of the conflict cycle, of how it goes around, that these are the stages of it, and then people intervene, they pull it apart, etc. And I mean, how many times have you seen some guy stand there, hold me back, man, hold me back, right? Where the friends intervene.
Making the declaration, hold me back. And
yeah.
Of course, I've seen this now a bunch of times, is that these guys are doing the arms are out, the chest is up. It's like, what's up? What's up? And they're like puffing up like
yes, that's the monkey dance.
Yeah, and clearly, and I loved the one YouTube that I saw, because I thought to myself, if somebody did that, I'm clanging them. I'm not going to wait.
Right.
I'm clanging them now because they're being stupid.
Well, okay, it's stupid because it's another script. It's a different script from you. Yeah. What you have, where the two guys are standing there woofing, huffing, puffing, etc., and it's a threat display.
Yeah.
And see, this is one of the issues that that what I teach, and I'm trying to spread the word to martial arts instructors, is there's a difference between a threat display and a pre-attack indicator. A man named Eric Hoffer wrote a book.
Oh, yeah, I love Eric Hoffer.
Yes. The man read this. Did you, by the way, know that he was a longshoreman?
He continued to work there. Do you know he turned down chairs at universities?
Yes.
Yeah, because he didn't want to be beholden to the man.
Right. Well,
I love Eric Hoffer.
Amazing. He came up with a saying, which is, rudeness is a weak man's imitation of strength.
Yes, I love that one.
And one of the things that I watched Cesar Millan's The Dog Whisperers, and he talks about, in the dog alpha hierarchy, he talks about insecure alphas, which is a dog that doesn't have what it takes to be a leader, who gets put into a position, and it's trying to ape, and their nervousness, their insecurity, really, an insecure alpha, it's a beta trying to be an alpha.
Yeah. So they're going to just ape it as best they can.
And aping it is the key element. And there's a lot of things that, a lot of people are trying to ape this behavior, that what they think this is what it is. And that's where
Bingo.
you get these guys. Rudeness is an imitation of strength. And
thank you, Eric Hoffer.
Yes, it's amazing. And the thing is, one of the things that Rory and I really have in common is our ability to be calm in extreme situations.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Which, incidentally, just for the record, I'd heard about Rory Miller,
mm-hmm.
and it was on your webcast.
Oh yeah.
That somebody said, he's being interviewed with Kris, and I'm listening to the webcast, and Rory was talking about the fact that he had gotten to the point where, somebody had to be shooting at him before he got mildly interested. And you said, that's a good thing. And he goes, no, it's not. And that was when I knew he was legit.
Yeah.
Right then I said, I got to meet this guy. But
I interpreted that as being a good thing. I mean,
no, it's not.
Yeah, no, I know.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that now. But at the time, it was like, okay, cool. It's just a day at the office. It's
right.
Okay.
But the thing is, you can get so far out of touch with normal society.
Yeah, no question.
That's an issue.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've been working for a long time coming into normal society and trying to work with the, what I call the civilians. But again, it's like I've perfected the disguise now. But every now and then I'll mention something about, there I was minding my own business and this guy was shooting and, just bad day at work. But the thing is, when you're getting back to this, the thing is, as fear is contagious, so is calm. And when somebody is calm, when somebody is an alpha, and that's the term that I'm trying to get away from because I introduced it into the self-defense world and it has come back, bit me on the ass. The thing is, the guy who is in control, the guy who's got it, has the resources that he doesn't have to get stressed.
Right.
So people are like, yeah, I'm going to show how big and bad I am by going, what's up, and all this, etc. And what they're actually showing is that they're scared.
Well, I'll tell you what. You wouldn't remember this, but I'm going to say this was probably, maybe 10, 12 years ago. I had read your book. It's the one with the white and blue cover.
Which one? There's 21 of them.
I don't, It's the white and blue covered one.
I don't know.
Is it Bouncer's Guide?
No, that's Peyton.
That's Peyton's.
The Violence Blenders, Fractured Jaws, the Street Etiquette.
No, keep coming.
Okay. Pool cues, beer bottles.
Ambushes.
Cheap Shots, Ambushes is white with the target on it. And by the way, I didn't come up with the titles of these books.
Well,
but anyway, what was the concept?
It's the one that has like the. I think it has probably like about 30 or 40 things in the back, that are just listed like, remember, tracer bullets don't only tell you...
Oh, Murphy's Laws of Combat. Yes. Murphy's Laws of Combat. That's called Taking It to the Streets, I think.
Well, anyway, I read that book, and it was like, dang, this thing is the bomb. And in an offhand, I mean, this is back in the days of AOL. I think you had an AOL account.
I did, yeah.
And I sent you an email, and I said, this thing is just the bomb, And I tried to be real brief. Because I know how you rock stars are. And
say what? Who you talking to?
Yeah. And you said, yeah. And it was basically I was talking about woofing and the display. And you said, yeah. Always be wary of the guy who calmly stands up in the corner and starts walking towards you.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, yeah, because that's the guy who's been there before.
Right.
And we're gonna, and we got some skills, and we're bringing them to the table.
And here's where we get into, and this is the important aspect of conflict communications. An overwhelming majority of violence is what's called social violence, and that's Rory Miller's term.
Yeah.
Right. We've taken that one, and I mean, read Rory's books. I recommend it. Rory and I had an interesting conversation. I said, what I really love about you is your ability to take this stuff to a fundamental level. I've been working on this for years, and you can take it down one level deeper and make it simpler, and then I can work with that. And his response was, you're the one who taught me that it's not easy. Right. You're the one who taught me that it's complicated, and he often accuses me of making him think, which is really fun, because this is a complex subject. And the idea of that there's no absolutes, everything's variable, and it depends on factors. So when you can get these basic guidelines, like and Rory's model is social violence versus asocial violence. Social violence is the primate monkey, our status in a group.
I've got a
for
perfect
achieving.
example
Go
of
ahead.
social violence. Here it is. We're in high school. These two guys decide they're going to have a fight to find out who the alpha male is. We all go off campus at 3:15.
Yes.
Everybody's there. We're all here to see who's going to settle this.
Right.
It goes until one of them establishes dominance. It's not a beatdown at this point.
No.
It's just dominance.
No.
And then the football coach stepped in and
Yes.
said, "That's enough."
Right. And once you realize the coach had been standing there all along.
Yeah.
And that's the thing of...
But what he did was he let it go long enough so that there would be order in our tribe.
Yes.
And then he stepped in as the uber authority
Yes.
and said, "We're done." And we all went, yes,
Yes.
we agree. You're the uber authority.
Yes.
We agree.
Right.
We've seen this now. You've seen it. We all know, and we agree. We're going home.
Right. We have it taken
Social
care of.
violence.
That is it in a nutshell. Now, the thing that is interesting about that is you will see that most fights occur between the betas, not the higher level alphas. What you'll see is that there's more jockeying for position among the lower rankings, and they're trying to gain more status, but often they don't have what it takes to make that jump.
Well, according to Marlon Perkins,
Mm-hmm. Yes,
from the
Mutual Omaha, Wild Kingdom.
In the same way that I thought it was always that there was a beta always challenging a male. But you're saying it's really most of the business is secondary level.
Right. And again, one of the problems, and I agree with Rory Miller, and I mentioned that, I screwed up when I brought in the alpha and beta concept into the self-defense world because people just ran with it into some really strange ways. In packs, there's only one alpha. But in human primate behavior, there's many different levels and somebody's really good at this job, somebody's really good at that job, that's their area, and we trade who's in charge pretty frequently.
How, well, let me put it this way. I've known some pretty high-powered CEOs who don't have a clue on how to run a computer.
Right.
That don't
That's a
know.
hireable skill.
Yeah, it's a hireable skill. And so, they're freed up to make, different levels of decisions, and that's what they're paid to do. But that is an alpha male that has no discernible skills other than, what, vision?
No, actually leadership is a skill unto itself.
Okay, yeah, leadership, okay.
And yes, there's a lot of vision, there's a lot of things. There's a fascinating book called The Ape in the Corner Office.
Yes.
And that talks about the monkey brain in business and how often what the, quote, heads in business are very adroit socially. And there's all kinds of different things of you would think the CEOs are, always in control, but they're not. They jockey and they are very, very subtle about their displays. One of the things that we give in our speech is about conflict communications is that we say this is a dominance display, and we have a guy who's leaning over a kid and he's threatening him and the kid's cowering down. And then the next click is a CEO sitting at the head of the table with his hands behind his head. And that's a dominance display.
Let me tell you about this dominance display.
Okay.
All in a meeting. It's like this morning meeting and all of this kind of stuff. And everybody's kind of getting their coffee and they're getting around the table and everything. And the head guy walks in.
Was he late?
No, it gets better than that.
Okay.
He wasn't late. He was on time. But he, and this is not like way up. I don't want to put the names and stuff in this.
Right. We don't go there.
Yeah. But it was, regional manager type stuff, right? Came in, made his little cup of coffee, walked over to to another regional manager, put his ass right up on his shoulder as he was sitting in the chair, and farted.
Yes.
And then never said anything and walked over and sat down.
And I mean, it's funny because you think, okay, this would be something that wouldn't happen among civilized people. And yes, to this day, there are all these different levels of here, smell my feet. And it is a dominance display. And that's the thing, we tend to find our place. And again, this is being in a group is more important than our status in the group. But once we're in a group, our status is critical. And the more insecure somebody is, the more they're trying to make a status statement. Now, this can become a real problem if there isn't a group. And this is where a lot of people in the self-defense world come in, well, what if I'm in a bar and some guy comes up and gets in my face and he's da-da-da-da, what do I do, what do I do? Well, first of all, there's no group. All you have is a crowd. A group is an established group. It's a group with a group. A group is a collection of people who have established relationships. They have rules, they have boundaries, they work together to achieve these ends.
Rules of admission.
Yeah, rules of admission and behavior and all these things and how things are done. And this is very much an issue of also self-identity. See, if I walk up and I ask somebody, who are you? They'll start telling me all these scripts, all these roles, all these positions. You know, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm da-da-da-da-da. We define ourselves by the stories we tell ourselves.
You know what my response was in my head when you asked me was, I don't know.
Okay, well, my response is, I'm me.
Yeah, mine was, I don't know, because it's like, well, what do you want to know?
Right, that's a big, but the thing is that when we're in a group, we have roles in the group, we have positions. You know, you're a father, he's a son. These are things that, with the roles comes ways to behave. And that is something that we unconsciously know and follow. Now, when we're dealing with somebody from a different culture, that can be confusing. Or when you walk into a group or a crowd which has no real connection. These are just people who happen to be in the same area at the same time. When somebody is trying to establish their dominance and show their status in that environment, we're like, what? We're confused because there is no group.
Sure.
It's just a crowd.
Yeah, there's nothing congealed about it.
Right. And that's where when somebody comes up, and the thing is, understand, humans are designed to infect each other. We are emotionally infectious to each other. And this is a really important
fascinating comment.
It's a survival thing, and I go back to Thongor the learning impaired, and this is an important element. And here we are out on the savannah of Africa, and Bob comes tearing out of the bushes, and his eyes are really wide, and he is just booking in fear. What do you think the survival chances of somebody says, oh, I say, Robert seems to be in a bit of a tizzy. What say we finish our tea and ask him what's what? No. Most people are going to actually be sitting in the tree with Bob going, Bob, what are we running from?
Yeah.
And we're designed to infect each other. And this comes back to the scripts that we follow during conflict. Because one of the things of conflicts, and these scripts are designed to keep the group together.
Fascinating.
So the group doesn't blow up. Well, here we are, we're in a bar, we don't know anybody, we're never going to see these people again, and some guy comes up and starts doing a status monkey dance with you. Right? And we get infected. All of a sudden, we think our status is online.
What status is there?
Exactly. And the trick is when somebody's trying to infect you with this, you don't get caught up. You understand this is a monkey brain kicking in and go, no, I got to do this. I got to do this. So many people who are insecure in themselves, who don't have a status of their own, not comfortable in their own skins, are easily infected by somebody with the same problem. And this is where the betas start going. And this is where when somebody walks up and says, well, what do I do? Some guy is hitting on my woman. What do I do? It's like, okay, important safety tip. You look at her and go, what do you want to do about this? And if she says, we'll leave, you get up and leave. Now, this is important because, so many guys, but if I don't stand up, she'll think I'm a pussy. Let me tell you something. Every time I fight over pussy, I never got any.
Okay, now we just went into the explicit rate. Now I have to go mark explicit.
Well, yes, explicit. I'm sorry. Come on, you're talking to a guy named Animal.
Yeah.
But the fact is, most of the time, women think you're a dork if you're fighting to impress them. And this is where the thing, if you ask the woman, what do you want to do? And she says, let's leave. Okay, fine. Guess who's getting laid tonight? It ain't him.
Well, you know what? I had a girlfriend one time that actually told me, and this was the beginning of the end. She actually told me, she said, I think it would be pretty cool if sometime some guy came on to me and you had to...
No, that's a lowbrow breeder. You don't want to... Yeah.
No, and I mean...
No,
it was
LBBs. Don't...
No,
yes.
But, at that point, I was like, what kind of sick idea is that?
Well...
And even in my, my 22-year-old mind, I was going, that's messed up.
Well, there is. And, I mean, the fact is, I was in a Taco Bell when I was a teenager. And there was a sweet young thing looking at me, and I just went over and I was talking to her, and we're just having a good time, and she's just, it's going well. And all of a sudden I hear, what you doing cutting on my woman?
Nothing. See ya.
No, actually, not exactly. And I looked over, and here's this gorilla, and it's like, excuse me, dude, I'm busy here, and it's like, this is my woman. And I hadn't been inoculated yet, so I got infected. And I'm saying, he and I are about to go at it, and I look over, and I swear this woman had an expression of sexual excitement on her face. And I went, wait a minute, something's wrong here.
Because she's pulled this on him before.
Yeah, and that's what I said. I put up my hands, I said, stop, let me ask you something. Has this happened to you before? And he goes, yeah. Guys are always hitting on my woman. I said, dude, she came on to me. We were set up. She's setting you up to fight over her.
Yeah.
And I ain't playing
that game. Did he
buy it? When I said I ain't playing it, I turned and walked away.
Yeah.
But he was like, click, 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 click. And then I heard her, no. And it's like, that was a fight. I was out of there. But
you dropped that bomb and left.
Yeah, I did. But that was another one. But at the other hand, I also had a situation where there was a party. And I was dating a girl who was in a higher social class than I was. And a bunch of thugs came to this party that she was throwing. They're making noise. They're causing trouble. And she went to talk to him, and it's not going well. They're like, ha, 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 what are you doing, chick? And I grabbed a beer bottle, flipped it upside down. I walked in, and I said, I'm looking for an honor guard into Valhalla. Expletive deleted. See, we don't have to be too expletive.
Yeah.
And they sat there, and they said, there's one dude, and he's here, he's armed, he's going to hurt us. We may kill him, but he's taking us, and by the way, what's Valhalla? And the thing was, they left, and that was fine, and I turned, and she jumped on me. Oh, she tore me a new one.
Mm-hmm.
Because, she'd been handling it, she thought.
You ruined the dance.
Well, no, because I disrespected her.
Oh. Well, so you ruined the dance.
But see, in the other hand, I saw the way this was going, and instead of asking her permission, can I take over? I just stepped in.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, these are the things of, the disrespect, and the small things like this are what get us in conflict. And see, this is an issue that has bothered me about martial arts training is, here they are, they're talking about self-defense, et cetera, and they only focus on the physical hitting. Not all the stuff that leads to physical violence. Not all the off-ramps. And there are lots of off-ramps. If you think of physical violence as a road, if you're going 110 miles an hour, you can't take these off-ramps. And the faster you go, the further down that road you go, the harder it is to get off. But there are off-ramps. And anywhere along the process, if you're talking about personal safety, it's knowing how to behave, how not to cause these reactions that's going to kick somebody into a monkey brain dominance script.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? And I mean, there's some things, Peyton Quinn, who will be here this weekend, is brilliant in his ability to sum things down, or boil things down and sum them up very well. And he came up with 4 rules, but then some people got really dumb and he had to change it to 5. Okay, and the 5 rules of social violence is don't insult him, don't threaten him, don't challenge him, don't deny that it's happening, and give him a face-saving exit. Now, to me, the stupidest last words ever spoken is looking down the barrel of a gun and going, you ain't got the guts, especially when said in Spanish. But see, in the monkey dance, in the conflict cycle, where you're doing threat displays to scare this other monkey away, see, most threat displays are trying to avoid violence. See how big and bad I am? See how tough I am? And I mean, I've seen escalado, which is what I call when somebody's standing there screaming, waving a knife, going, I'll kill you, I'll kill you. They're across the room. They're not attacking you. But they are showing you how serious they are. They're showing that I might. If you don't change your behavior, I might. But see, when we're caught up in the monkey dance, our old monkey says, oh, yeah? And it's like the New York City actress, the robbers came in. Yeah, what are you going to do? Shoot us? Well, yeah, those are our last words. Yeah. Don't threaten him. I'm going to kick your ass. Right? Don't insult him. Blankety, blankety, blank has no part of de-escalation.
No, it doesn't. And I talked about this story in another podcast, but it's a great one. Is that we had a karate club, maybe it's like 60, 80 people, and we're having a celebration after the test. Everybody's piled into Sensei's house and everything, and this guy comes in and he's kind of hanging out in the kitchen with us, and Sensei's wife comes in and says, "Excuse me, I don't know you." And he's like, "Oh, well, I just saw there was a party, so I came by." And she goes, "Well, this is," and she explains to him, and he goes, "You mean everybody here does karate?" And she goes, "Yeah." And this was so cool of him. He just goes, he pointed to the door going out the kitchen, and he goes, "See that door? That's the one I'm using to go home."
Yes.
Or whatever it was.
Yes.
Like, "See that door? That's the one I'm using to leave," which was, I mean, it wouldn't have escalated into anything, but he took that off ramp and in a very kind of funny way and disarmed it, and everybody went on.
And that's fine. See, like I said, most violence comes with instructions how to avoid it.
Most violence comes with instructions on how to
Even
avoid it.
asocial violence, which we haven't talked about when we'll get to it. A robber will walk up and say, "Give me your money," while holding a gun to you. That's an instruction.
Yes.
Guess what? If you give him your money,
he has his resource. He moves on.
Right. And that's where, let's talk about that. Rory's definition of asocial and social violence. Now, some guy has taken this and has tried to run with it of, all asocial is lethal. Rah, 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 rah. No, it's not. Actually, most asocial violence is really not even violence. It's the threat of violence. If I walk up and stick a gun in your face, I am offering you the threat of the violence, because the threat of violence is more effective than violence.
Well, I look at it this way, and maybe I'm wrong, but the thing of it is that if you walk up and you stick a gun in my face and you say, "Give me your wallet," you want my resource.
Yes.
I have this resource. You can have it.
Right.
If you're a true predator,
we'll get to that in a second.
You'll just go and be gone, because you won't exert any more effort.
Right. That is the resource predator.
Yeah.
And that is, I'm there to get. And asocial violence occurs over gaining or preserving resources.
Right.
That's the one thing that Rory, I threw it at Rory and he was like, "You're right." Which is, we're here, we got our crops, etc., and these bandits come running over the hills. They're about to do asocial violence to get that crop. 7 samurai.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to kill them effectively to keep that from happening. We're fighting over resources.
You know what? I got to tell you something. I mean, boy, you take a look at the Old Testament, and that's all that is asocial violence.
Against other tribes.
And I'm going to wipe you out.
Social violence is what you do among those within your tribe.
Yeah.
And that's the status, that's all the boundary setting, there's all these reasons for violence. And it's mostly keeping the group going together and keeping the group going. Now, one of the things that I tell people, and this is news for any parent, I mean, have you ever dealt with your child and the child is resisting doing a job, and they're spending more energy resisting than it would take to do the job?
Wait, let me turn my head and look at my 14-year-old son sitting in the room.
It's possible. It may be.
It may have happened.
Yes. Now, having said that, do you realize what the kid's actually fighting for?
I don't know, but I'll tell you how I handle it.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll say things like, "You know what? I'm going to give you an opportunity to rethink that."
Yes.
And I'll say things like that. It's like, "I'm pretty sure that you didn't mean to say that, so I'm going to give you an opportunity to take that back."
The insults, the personalization, and that's where Peyton's rules of, we pretend or we feel that we are defending ourselves and keeping the rules going by using, rough, tough threat displays.
Yeah.
And insult, et cetera, and that's actually insulting. That's where the problem is.
Oh, sure. Yeah,
right, and that's how people.
Yeah.
That's how people get in trouble. They think they're defending their boundaries when in fact they're attacking verbally. And that causes when you insult them, you personalize them. That can make it. What the teenager is doing is actually fighting over division of labor and resources and how the group is going to be done. It doesn't matter how the stuff is done as long as it gets done. So if he's fighting for his right not to do it, and I use right in quote marks.
Yeah, sure.
It's fighting over division of labor. He's trying to control how the group is going to be run.
Well,
you do all the work.
But as an example, I'll preload it. It's like, you know what? There's a sink full of dishes. I cooked. It was a pretty good meal, wasn't it? Yeah, it was. Well, there's some dishes to be done.
The group comes up with rules. They come up with distributions. We figure out how to get by. Right. We don't remember compromise, but we're compromising all the time.
We don't remember compromise, but we're compromising all the time.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. I mean, no, I'm not disagreeing with you. I simply hadn't realized it.
Right. But we do it so naturally. To achieve the goals, we work together. Again, social primates.
Sure.
But what happens is we get into a situation like, okay, I married a woman from a ranching family. And one of the things that when we created our household, we had to determine which way does the toilet paper go into the roll.
Sure.
Because where she's from, it's never gone over the top.
Yeah, it's always
because kittens and kids will unroll it. Right. Well, in this household, since we have critters, we have ferrets. If you do it that way, a ferret will unroll. She puts it out on the bottom.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean.
Right.
Yeah.
So we had to discuss which way the toilet paper is going to go.
Mm-hmm.
So we figured out how to do that. That's the rule. Once this way of doing it is established, we move on too, and we just keep on going. And that's where, when we come from different families and we get married, that's what we're actually doing. We're negotiating how we do things, because this is, I grew up in this way. This is how mom and dad did. I didn't know that mom and dad negotiated that out.
Sure.
Right. And a lot of times what happens is when we get into situations where relationships fail, we're dealing with situations that one person or the other isn't compromising. I want it my way.
Right. And
at the expense of the other person. And that's a huge issue. You're not fighting to win, which, somebody is fighting to win is trying to fight so they have it their way. As opposed to...
Well, it's about dominance.
Well, and that's what they believe dominance is.
Sure.
They believe that, enforcing it, really, does it matter which way the toilet paper goes in?
Well, in your instance, it does. Because there's a
practical reason.
There's a practical reason for it. Me, when you were talking about that, I was thinking to myself, I don't have a clue. I just get it on the roll.
Right. But see, and that's the issues of where it becomes important.
Yeah.
But until that time, it's like not an issue.
No.
And this is the thing of we get into situations of where, once we get into the conflict cycle, when we're triggered emotionally, when we get adrenalized, when the chemical bath hits us, we are following this script, and this script has to be completed. And if it's not completed, that's where trouble starts.
All right. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to say, that's an enormous amount of information. That is a freaking huge amount of information. And I'm going to suggest to the listeners that they don't just listen to this podcast once or twice, but actually take it, listen to it a couple times, and see where it applies in your life.
Yes.
And I think that you're going to have a lot smoother and creamier life when you understand why you're doing what you're doing.
And they can find a lot of this information on the web.
And where would that be?
Wow, funny you should ask.
Yeah.
Rory Miller and I have a website called conflictcommunications.com. And you can read about the conflict cycle on the site. You can read about how our brains are wired, how we work together, and a lot of this other information. And realize that if you know this stuff about conflicts, the gang member and our wives, we both crossed the line in the same way. And it was knowing how not to unintentionally cross the line. I always liked I think it was Oscar Wilde's comment, of a gentleman never unintentionally gives offense.
Yes. Yeah, I love that too.
Right.
Well, he said a lot of things that were really great.
Yes.
But that's one of them.
But that's the idea of, are you unintentionally giving offense to people?
What's your website? What's the URL for that?
The No Nonsense Self-Defense website is nononsenseselfdefense.com.
Right. And you got 21 books out?
Books and videos, and I'm now working with Rory on the conflict communication book.
Name a couple of those books.
Cheap Shots, Ambushes, Knives, Knife Fighting, Related Hassles.
Cheap Shots and Ambushes is the bomb.
Yeah,
that thing is just, that's the stuff.
Well, that was me fresh off the streets, and basically I was getting tired. I was teaching, and I was getting tired of repeating myself, so I swore I was just going to write a little 25-page booklet, and the next thing I knew, I had a book.
Yeah.
This is all the stuff that goes in. And this is why, like I say, with martial arts instructors, if you claim to be teaching self-defense, you need to understand the dynamics of violence. Rory had a great line in his Logic of Violence class where he goes, how many years have you trained to fight criminals? How many of you spent one day learning how criminals operate?
Yeah.
You're coming up with ingenious solutions to non-existent problems. Right?
Again, we'll keep going if I'm not careful here. But
we can do part two.
Yeah. Well, name a couple more books, a couple DVDs. I want to make sure that people
the
understand
knife
them.
videos, Surviving a Street Knife Attack, is a double video with surviving or winning a street knife fight, and that one I'm not really happy with. I actually had to do that as a double deal, because basically, how to survive being assaulted by a knife is really an important safety tip. There's Taking It to the Streets, which is how to make your martial arts street effective. There's Secret of Effective Offense. There's Becoming a Complete Martial Artist with Tristan Sutrisno. And all these books. There's the Safe in the Street video, which shows you the 5 stages of violent crime, which is if you see this, you're being set up for crime, and that's court-tested and articulable.
That's a pretty good little video. If I remember right, it's only about like 40 minutes long, isn't it?
About an hour.
Yeah, about an hour. But boy, it breaks it down pretty good because you realize that you've let 3 or 4 precursors go by before.
And that's my problem with most martial arts training, because basically what it is how can I allow myself to be set up and put into a super dangerous situation and come out unscathed?
You're so far behind the curve.
Right, but see, awareness and avoidance. I'm the guy that actually started banging the drum on that and talking about it. What does that mean? And now there's so many people who go, yeah, we teach that, and that's what's called a hand wave. Yeah, we teach that. Yeah, we teach awareness, avoidance. You should always have it.
For those of you who can't see it, he's scooping his hand in the
just
air.
Like the stage.
Come on in.
Yeah, no. Think about the guard that just waves you past.
Yeah.
And that is the problem, because they say everybody should have it, but nobody's teaching it. And I mean, I make it a habit to show these people articulatable facts, which, that video is court tested.
Well, look, it's just, there's every one of these books and DVDs, as far as I'm concerned, has, a deep, it's deep, it's meritorious, it has very, very good value. So my advice to anybody that's interested in any of your work is to go to the No Nonsense Self-Defense.com.
Yes.
And that basically will serve as a hub for all of these other things. And once you start exploring this, I think you're really going to be pleased with the things that you've discovered. I mean,
go to No Nonsense Self-Defense and take a cup of coffee.
Yeah, because you're going to be a while.
This is a complicated subject. There is no simple answer, and if you're looking for a simple answer, go study Krav Maga. Oh, I'm going to be a combative. I mean, and guess what? Have fun in the prison showers, because most of what's being taught as self-defense, there's only 2 problems with it. One is if it doesn't work, and the other is if it does.
Okay,
I mean,
now look, I'm going to leave that tease right there because seriously, this could go on until the cows come home. I mean, and you know what? Even if we spent another hour here, we still would only touch the surface of the material.
Yes.
And
let's cut it off here,
yeah,
and we can do it another one.
It's serious stuff. But listen, Marc, I want to thank you for being on the podcast. Bringing your knowledge in here, sharing it, and a lot of it, and really freely. Really appreciate that. Huge stuff. I'm a fan. I think we've made that clear. And and to all of you out there listening, hey, thanks for listening. And like I said, cue this up a couple times. Take a listen. Actually write a note to yourself and post it on your computer to listen to this podcast more than once, and to also write down a note or two, and now you're going to have a chance to apply it in your own life. Hey, listen, I'm Kris Wilder. Thanks a million for listening. Marc, say goodbye to him.
Goodbye to him.
Nice work.
Hi, this is Kris Wilder from Marshall Secrets. Marshall Secrets is free, but it's not costless. So tell your friends about Marshall Secrets. Your good words are the best endorsement we can have. Also, if you like what you hear, buy one of our books, buy one of our DVDs. We think they're pretty good, and we think you'll find value in them too. As always, we appreciate you listening and your support. You can find us pretty quickly by just going to Amazon.com, typing in Lawrence Kane or Kris Wilder, and you can find all of our books and DVDs there. Thanks for listening, and be well.